example. Look at what happened to Iran after the Islamic Republic took over. Look how we went into darkness. In Islam, if you look at the life of Muhammad, did he kill people? Yes, he did. He took part in 29 offensive battles. He committed genocide on the Jewish community of Khaybar and killed Kenana, the leader of that community, and then slept with his wife Sophia the same night he killed her husband. So that's why it's dangerous, because Muslims are here to colonize.
Didn't Jesus say that, though, to his disciples, spread the word?
Yes, spread the word, but not spread the word through sword. And Islam, if you look at the history of Islam grew by blood. Islam grew by sword. They used to go and attack countries, behead people.
How would you like to
the Quran
respond?
says to force people to believe?
It says
9:20. Quran chapter 9, verse 29.
There are two verses that say you can't force anyone to believe. But one of the things that concerns me most when you say that, Islam or Judaism even are not compatible with the West, the real question is not whether Islam is compatible with the West, or whether the West can tolerate Jews and Muslims. And what I'm getting from you is that the West can't and should not, and Christianity fundamentally is an intolerant religion, because if it was tolerant, there'd be no problem.
I'm sure Abdullah's views and most Muslims' views on trans and how we bring up our children are much more aligned with your values than, let's say, woke liberal.
If this man is saying that transgenderism is wrong because Allah has told him to do so, I already disagree with that statement because I believe his God is fictitious.
Oh, I don't.
The second thing...
Let's go back to your other nonsense, mate. You said that Iran is technologically advanced. All they built is rockets and missiles because
to face Israel.
To face Israel, and that's what keeps them in power. There's a reason why the Islamic Republic is under sanctions, because they're the biggest state sponsor of terrorism, and they sponsor your friends Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis. And you stand on the side of terrorists.
My friends, right? You know I could do you for slander, you know that.
Absolutely.
So the prophets of the Old Testament are immoral for practicing polygamy.
Well, so the thing...
And God is immoral then for allowing them to practice polygamy then.
No.
It's how Muslims are voting in this country that I have a big problem with. Majority are Palestine first before anything.
The problem is that Israel has many people in their pocket who are Israel first.
Hello, it's me, Kezia Noble, and welcome to another show of UK Now. Today's question: is it possible for Islam to coexist with the West? Joining me today is Abdullah Al Andaluci. He's an international speaker and the co-founder of the Muslim Debate Initiative, political commentator and Christian evangelist Young Bob, and political analyst Younes Sadaghiani. Welcome, welcome. You are not in the lion's den, okay? I will be fair, I promise.
It's okay. 2 versus 1, that is fair.
Wait,
For me.
wait, you'll
I don't
see.
agree with all his positions, trust me, because I'm not a fanatic.
So I'm going to start with Young Bob.
Yeah.
Now, many say that Islam as an ideology is problematic for both the Christian West and the liberal West. But is it? Now, Islam encourages modesty, charity, belief in one God. They believe Jesus is the Messiah. They believe in prayer. Their views on woke are very much aligned with Christianity. So for me, I can see the conflict where it comes to the liberal West, and I'm quite liberal. I can see the conflict there to the liberal kind of ideology of the West. But surely with the Christian ideology, it's very much aligned.
Not really. So firstly, I would say that I'm going to posit that Islam goes against the social human convention of atheism, which, commonly within religious traditions is like the Fitra, for example, the common dispensation towards truths come from God, right? So if we look at things like cousin marriage, I think it goes against human intuition. Which
Judaism allows cousin marriage?
Yeah, I'm against Judaism on that front as well. So I would say that Islam goes against the human psyche, any sort of spiritual intellect that different religious traditions teach, and it goes against the Christian tradition in terms of distorting the position on Isa, Christ, accepting him as an Islamic prophet, but denying his divinity. And of course, on modesty, it's an oxymoron. They preach extreme modesty. If we compare the ultimate rationale for why women wear veils in the Christian tradition, it's in submission to the church when the Eucharist is in procession. Comparing that to constantly having to wear things which reduces the chance that men lust is a form of collective punishment on the female sex because the male sex will commit sins that they're accountable for.
So you've mentioned a few things, and I'll let you respond to that, but you've mentioned a few things that you said is not aligned, but I mentioned a lot more things that are aligned with Christianity. Would you like to
I
respond?
like the question is, so then Judaism is not compatible with the West either? So Jews are not compatible with the West?
Oh, of course not. I don't believe that if Judaism preaches cousin marriage, but interestingly,
It allows
it.
well,
It doesn't
The
preach
Bible
it, it allows it.
Sorry. The Bible which you believe in
No, it doesn't.
allows
No, it
it.
doesn't.
It
It's not
does.
prohibited in
It is.
Leviticus.
It's not.
The
Excuse me. I know about the Old Testament, and
Yeah.
it also Jews are allowed to have
I'm
multiple.
talking- I'm
Jews
ta-
are allowed to have multiple wives. Also, these are things that have been changed along the years to fit in with Western society.
It's the abrogation. It's the abrogation of the ceremonial laws within the Old Testament into the New Testament.
In the New
So,
Testament,
one
it says
second, one second.
all Scripture is God-breathed
Yeah, of
and
course.
useful for teaching and instruction, acts of
But
righteousness,
as
which
this-
means the Old
as this-
Testament can be used as a model for Christians, and historically has it
So
not
the
been
only
used
time
as a guidance for Christian social teaching and laws?
Okay, so if you look at the catechism within the Orthodox Church, we are told not to read the Old Testament as is harmful and teaches heretical doctrine. If you understand it, it's still applicable towards the Christians of
Is
today.
the West based on Orthodox Church?
Pardon?
Is the West based on the Orthodox
It should
Church?
be. Now,
Is-
without
that's
interruption,
the Eastern Church,
without interruption,
not the Western. The Western
without-
Church was the Catholic
yes,
Church.
but if you look
and the
at
Protestant
if you look at the
churches.
Catholic Church, the
We're
answer.
talking about Western civilization.
If you look at
here,
the
not
catechism,
the
if you look at the
Slavic
catechism,
civilizations
if you look at the
of the Eastern
catechism of the
Orthodox Church.
Catholic Church as well, it also teaches this as well. Most catechisms, most people who are prepared to be baptized will not read the Old Testament because if you believe that this doctrine applies to you now, it is heterodox and anathema. The second thing I will say as well, why is it within Bradford, according to a study done by the National Institute of Health, 69% of Pakistanis are engaged in first cousin marriages, comparing to the national average of 1%. If you look
That's
at
a cultural
Arabia,
thing. That's amongst
No, but-
Pakistanis.
yeah.
If you
But-
go
but-
to the Yemeni community, for instance, the Moroccan community, it's not so.
can we agree? Can we
rife.
agree?
Sure.
Can we
We
agree?
have to understand
But
the
we have-
difference
but-
between culture and religion.
But
can
we
we-
need to go back to
can we-
obviously, are
one-
Jews
No, no, no,
incompatible
no,
with Western civilization because they allow
Of course,
cousin
of
marriage?
course not. But if we agree that,
They're not compatible.
of course not. I believe
So
in.
Jews are not compatible in the
Yes,
West.
both Jewish and Islamic religions are not
Or they call
compatible
it the
with the West.
Judeo-Christian values. They call it
I'm,
the
not a
Judeo.
I'm not a dispensationalist, unfortunately. Now, the position that I hold to is firstly, I'm a Christian sectarian. I believe that in order to achieve homogeneity, we have to have a majority Christian land, a majority ethnically English land, and a majority English-speaking population. In saying that, I believe also that, like I said before, the Old Testament laws are no longer applicable to the people of the New Covenant. You see this within Christ talking
Okay, well,
about...
let's just stick to Islam here, because
Okay.
you've made your point clear that he does not think he's applying this to Judaism also. He does not think it's compatible with the West.
Correct.
But you are a practicing Christian, and you're not a fan, obviously, of the extreme liberalism and atheism. I mean, you're much more aligned with Abdullah's beliefs and outlooks, because he's not going to be, he's anti-woke as much as you are. He doesn't believe in all this liberalism and do what you please. So do you understand that you're talking about cousin marriage and things like this, but the fundamentals you're both very much aligned on?
Well, the question is, you mentioned English. English law, is cousin marriage prohibited under the law of England and Wales?
Of course not, but we should change
So
that.
then, so my point is this. So you're arguing that English law has to change itself.
Yes.
But yet, for people who align with English law, they're not compatible with England.
Yes, because we have been able to have these
So English
laws
law is not compatible with England.
Yes, of course. Because if you look
Okay.
within atheism, we come through moral truth claims.
But you're not
through
atheist. I'm not-
but you're
I'm
talking
confused.
about liberalism and Christianity.
No, I'm talking about English law.
No, okay.
And so English law allows. Let's get the premises
Okay,
sorted.
but let's not
What I'm
interrupt
saying
each
is
other.
that you two have more in common than you think.
Can I
You're
respond
both
to that?
against.
Your
Without
issue
any
with Islam
interruption,
is
can I
that
respond to it?
the
Let
issue
him-
with
let him
Islam,
speak.
with Islamic law and Jewish law as well, is that it coincides with English law, and that's why Jewish law and Islamic law are not compatible, even though they're practiced informally. They're not compatible with English law or England, even though English law itself is aligned. That it's kind of contradictory.
So-
or is England defined as you define it? So you're the sole person to define what should or should not be English.
No, so the original claim was that I believe that Islam goes against the human psyche, human conventions which make up atheist principles on morality and the Christian doctrine surrounding moral law as well. Now, in that,
conventions?
1 second, because I allowed you to
Okay.
speak, teach, and practice
Continue.
piety, my friend. So the problem is, right, if you take like the consequentialist position on reviewing the consequence within the nature, the law of nature, right? If we have a sort of marriage unit that causes an increase of birth defects, I think that nature would tell us, or our human intuition would say that that is wrong. The second thing as well, historically within the church, you would have to have a papal decree in order to even consider marrying your cousin. No priest currently will allow you to marry your cousin because they understand that there is a medical damage towards engaging in that relationship, which the Quran permits. So why is the Quran and why is your
Permits,
God...
it doesn't encourage. It's a big difference.
Yes, it's saying you're allowed to do something, but saying, well, you shouldn't really do it. I understand there's a difference, but the fact of the matter is you're still allowing it. And you saying that is there's a cultural difference. Well,
It is.
Yeah, okay.
It's more
Religion
rife in the
Can
Pakistani
we agree-
community than, for instance, the Moroccan or
we agree-
Algerian community.
Can we agree that religion informs culture?
Yes.
To some extent.
Okay, fantastic. So in cultures that allow and permit cousin marriage, or it's prolific, also are majority Muslim, right?
Well,
No, the Jews have a lot
does
of
culture
cousin
inform
marriage.
law?
Yes.
So the law of England and Wales is that cousin
What was
marriage
the what was-
is permitted.
What was the first parliamentary
And-
meeting in Labour?
and the-
Under the Labour Party, what was the first
I'm-
parliamentary
I'm
hearing?
talking as
was
is-
the abolishment of
as-
cousin marriage.
as is current English, the law of England and Wales permits cousin marriage, and in all Western countries, it is permitted.
Does that
America,
represent... Does that,
France,
does-
Portugal,
I
where
think,
I'm
and I
from.
also think you're getting
So-
stuck on cousin marriage. Can you not see how much
that
Islam
not-
and Christianity have in common
No,
when it's trying to fight
absolutely not.
the woke kind of liberal? You can't see
no,
that.
you
They
can-
preach modesty. They preach
you don't let me
charity. No. Let me finish.
Yes.
They preach modesty. Okay, you think it's extreme modesty. They preach charity, prayer, self-discipline, no alcohol. Isn't this a good thing for society?
Of course not, because if you do something under the wrong God, that's a sin
Well,
automatically.
they believe
right?
in the same God as you.
No, I don't.
They believe that Jesus is the Messiah.
That's-
The Abrahamic God. You can't get away from
Okay,
this.
just because they claim an Abrahamic continuity doesn't mean they believe in the exact identical conception of God.
Okay, but the Catholic Church has affirmed, as well as Maimonides, the famous Jewish
That's
scholar.
natural theology.
So both Jews and the majority Christian sect of the world affirms that Muslims worship the same God.
Do you know
as
why
them.
that? Do you know why they do that? It's called generic.
it-
It's
it-
called
it
generic
doesn't-
theism.
It doesn't.
They believe that you
doesn't
can
matter.
reduce. It does. It does.
It doesn't matter.
Because they
it doesn't
believe.
matter. What matters.
No,
what
you're
they believe
mischaracterizing
in
the
the
Catholic
same
position.
in the same God.
Why?
They
Because
say
of
they believe in the
generic
same God.
theism. You've not read Satellite Vatican actually outlines the reason why they believe that. It's through generic theism. They believe that you can reduce down the existence of God as a purely monotheistic being. So extensionally, you believe in the same God, but you don't in terms of the conceptions of God. You've made a massive
they don't
error.
believe in the
Hold it.
Trinity.
Do you
Hold
believe?
it.
Do you believe, for example,
Hold it.
that a
There might be-
Catholic would not be committing a sin by praying in the name of Allah in the way that the Muslims define it? Of course not.
Yes,
if
Arab
you were doing
Catholics
that,
do. Yes.
no, that's the name. I'm talking about the conception I'm talking about the conception of God that it invokes.
Some people
Don't be a sophist, my friend.
No, some people
Also,
think
it's illah within the Arabic church.
Some people think you're honest. Some people think you're a liar. They have two different ideas of who you are, but it's the same person they're talking about.
No,
right?
so you're
so
talking-
you can have different ideas about the same thing, and it's the same thing. You know, the ancient Greeks thought the sun some thought there was a disc, some thought it was a globe, some thought it was an upturned bowl. There are different ideas of what the sun was, but they all agree
Because
there's
it has
only
the same-
one.
it has the
There's
same-
only one sun.
No, it's
so
because it has the
philosophically,
same-
my friend,
Yes.
it does not make sense.
It
Okay,
does.
I'm stopping this now because
say something about this?
I'm going to actually ask you a question. No, because you're going on to the minutiae of the beliefs,
So you
whereas
just
I'm talking about
mischaracterised-
Islam as an ideology, if it can be coexist with the West. So
Yeah.
let's try and stick to that. So Younes, I'm going to go to you now. Now you refer to Islam as a mind virus, but I would like you to expand on that. Why it's a mind virus, but also why Islam is the fastest growing number of converts, not people being born into Islam. The converts now 5,000 to 6,000 per year in the UK alone.
I actually think that's true statistically because, for example, first of all, let me just make my position very clear. I'm not religious. I think I'm not a religious fanatic. I'm not an Islamic fanatic or a Christian fanatic or a Jewish fanatic. I think there's no difference between being a religious fanatic and an atheist. Because atheists are convinced there is no God, and the religious fanatics are convinced that their religion and their God is the correct one.
So us three are fanatics then?
These two are for sure.
No, I believe in one God.
I believe in one God, but
but
let me.
100%. Like there's.
But
I
I'm not.
don't-
I'm not religious in the sense that I'm spiritual. I believe in God. I don't see God. I see God as energy, frequency, and vibration. And I think every single religion throughout history was a perspective on God. So no religion is 100% wrong. No religion is 100% right. There are some religions that are best. Let me just.
God, which is really atheism anyway.
No.
It's a God that has no
No. I think
agency.
I think we are part of God. God is within you. You're not a drop in the ocean. You're ocean in a drop. That's what Persian philosopher Rumi said. But I don't want to get into religious debates like this.
Why
because,
is it a mind virus? Islam?
Because, look, first of all, you have to look at, for example, I give you an example. Look at what happened to Iran after the Islamic Republic took over. Look how we went into darkness. In Islam, if you look at the life of Muhammad, did he kill people? Yes, he did. He took part in 29 offensive battles. He committed genocide on the Jewish community of Khaybar and killed Kenana, the leader of that community, and then slept with his wife Sophia the same night he killed her husband. Okay? Did he behead people? Yes. Did he kill people? Yes. So I actually think out of the three Abrahamic religions, I actually prefer Christianity the most.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Also, in Islam, Islam is a very militant religion. It's a political...
It's a muscular religion.
It's basically here to govern. I think spirituality is your relationship to God. I'm not supposed to tell you how to feel about God, and you're not supposed to tell me. Church and state should be separate. And that's why I also disagree with the Christian fanatics.
I believe in separation of church.
Separation of
in
church.
fact, there's a book that talks about the early development of science, and it actually argues that the separation of church and state actually developed science as it allowed for a secular element with science, which didn't impact the religious development of a country. So in terms of scientific development, it actually benefits a country to have a separation of church and state.
I think that religion has metaphoric truths in it.
But you haven't explained to me why this is a mind virus.
I'll explain to you exactly why. Because the Torah and the Bible, there were books of stories of things that maybe happened or didn't happen, but I believe in the metaphoric truths of those. Then Muhammad comes and takes this, twists it, makes it tailor fit to his ideology.
Yes, as the Jews corrupted it and
exactly.
we were
So he
restoring
makes it his own, and then he makes it a militant religion. It says it in the Quran, Muslims have a responsibility to Islamize the whole world.
Yes.
They believe that.
Yes.
So that's why it's dangerous, because Muslims are here to colonize.
Didn't Jesus say that, though, to his disciples, spread the word? And
yes, spread the word, but not spread the word through sword. And Islam, if you look at the history of Islam grew by blood. Islam grew by sword. They used to go and attack countries, behead people.
How would you like to
Quran
respond?
says to force people to believe?
It says
9:20. Quran chapter 9 verse 29. And by the way,
it doesn't say that.
It does say that. So I will quote it. I'll quote it. I will. So if you actually go to Quran chapter 9 verse 5, and if you look at the tafsir from Ibn Kathir, he uses this passage in saying that all of the peacetime verses have been abrogated and there should be no peace treaties with the Jews and Christians.
No, that's politics against the Roman Empire and what have you. But I'm talking about, where does it say force people to become Christian or to become a Muslim?
But then you have to look at the example of the life of
there
Muhammad.
are two verses that say there's no compulsion in religion, and there's another verse that said
let me explain to you.
If
But
God,
that's applied to the Jews.
Let me finish. Let me explain.
Let him finish.
Now
Let him
you're
finish.
cutting me. Practice piety and righteousness, my friend. Anyway. So there's another verse that said that had God so willed, he would have made everyone follow one religion. So who are you to compel people to enter into?
Because the first
Islam?
passage you
so
quoted.
There are, let me finish.
Correct.
Because you've all had a disproportionately much larger time than I have to speak.
Yeah.
So there are two verses that say you can't force anyone to believe. And then the one verse says and explains it because truth is clear from error. So you don't need to force anyone, just explain and propound the truth.
Do you understand that verse applies for the Jews?
Now, while there is a difference, it's Jews and Christians and beyond.
No.
Anyway, let me finish.
There's no
Before you start
compulsion
telling me
in
my own
religion.
religion, sir, right?
Because it's a religious debate.
Let me finish my discussions, because there's a number of points mentioned, and I want to go for them in sequentially. You argued for modesty. Christians have always argued that people should be modest. What counts as modesty is very vague and amorphous. 100 years ago, women would be much more covered, and Christians, Bible-bashing Christians would argue vehemently. The majority would say women should be fully covered, and they might not approve of current-day quote-unquote understandings of modesty. So Christians, and even at once, 100 years ago, the temperance movement in England was moving to ban alcohol in the UK, as well as, and in America, they were successful. They were successful until they got pushed back. These are Christians leading the charge on this. So Christianity has what they call social teaching, or it has demands for laws that should be Christian. But one of the things that concerns me most when you say that, Islam or Judaism even are not compatible with the West, is the real question is not whether Islam is compatible with the West, but whether the West can tolerate Jews and Muslims. And what I'm getting from you is that the West can't and should not, and Christianity fundamentally is an intolerant religion, because if it was tolerant, there'd be no problem. But if it is intolerant, then there's the problem. And that sounds like what you're arguing, that Christianity is intolerant. And as for the other interlocutor here,
respond?
but I need to respond to all the points. He says, during the time of the Shah, before the Islamic Revolution, Iran was so great. But after the Islamic Revolution, it got into dark times. Can I ask you a question? Do you know how many countries have spaceports in the world?
No.
You don't?
Spaceports.
Spaceports. Their own spaceport where they make the rocket and they launch into space themselves.
Because that's what the Islamic Republic spends people's money on. People don't have
do you know
water.
How many?
Excuse me.
Do you know how
People
many?
don't have water.
Do you know
excuse
how
me,
many?
let me answer your question.
Do you know how many?
It's irrelevant to what you're
No,
saying.
because you said it's in darkness.
No, because
Right? So
because that's
there
what
are-
they
there
do.
are about 10
The
or-
Islamic Republic
Okay.
has spent
Now
money
I don't like
on
where
rockets.
it's going. Let me finish.
No.
I asked you just one question.
No, but
you
like
don't,
you're
you
wrong.
don't know, then fine. Allow me to answer
The
you.
Islamic
Allow me to-
Republic has
let
spent
me-
money
Allow me
on
to illuminate
missiles.
you, sir. Let me illuminate you.
Sure.
About 10 to 11 countries around the world.
Yeah,
if
but
you
they
want
don't
to,
have
if you want
water.
to, if you
They
want to
have
build,
space
if you
ports.
want to build a
Let him finish his
rocket,
point.
you have to go to these countries and pay them. Can I use your spaceport? And can you build a rocket for me? Whatever. Iran is one of them. Under the mullahs,
Yes.
right?
But they don't have water and gas.
They're more advanced.
They don't have
They were
water and
more
gas.
advanced
They can't provide water and gas to their people.
That's not a good
secular
argument, because
Shah.
Russia also they
Russia.
had
North
a
Korea,
fantastic.
North Korea
Yeah,
is
of course.
It's not a good
but-
example.
No.
Can we not
because he
revert
said-
this to a shouting
he said-
match?
he
I
said-
feel like we're getting
yeah,
off topic
yeah.
drastically.
He
So-
said darkness.
Wait, one
and-
second. I wanna
because
be
it's-
able to
I need to
respond.
respond
because
to him. One second. Okay.
the implication. Calm down, sir.
It's disordered, this.
The implication is that Islam brings technological regression.
Yeah, it does.
Okay,
100%.
But yet, if Iran technologically advances more than what did before, I say more Islamic flavor regime, not really an Islamic regime, but a more Islamic flavor regime, then that is a refutation of your point. They build missiles that can defeat Israel's
That's
defenses.
all they built. That's all they built.
Hypersonic missiles and things like this.
That's
So
all
it
they
doesn't seem
built.
like a technologically regressive Stone Age
Can I answer?
civilization that he's
I answer?
fine. Now, then he made some imprecations
point.
against the Prophet Muhammad, which I'd like to do, and they are all fallacious. One was that he said, he killed this guy called Kanana and then married the Kanana's wife.
Fact.
What you don't know, because he relies on certain sources.
Fact.
These exact same sources, the ones that he has to rely on, because they're the only sources that we know about this, say that Kanana's wife she had bruises on her. She was beaten by Kanana, right? She's been
So he
regularly
killed
beaten,
her husband
and
and
then
saved
she
her. Okay.
voluntarily chose to marry the Prophet
Yeah, sure,
Muhammad.
yeah.
Right? He doesn't mention that's from the same source. You can't say no. Let's ignore that
Okay,
bit I don't
I'm
like.
gonna now
Okay,
let
Let's
him.
ignore that bit I don't like.
Excuse
and
me,
I
I
only
just
want
want
to quote the bit that I do
Listen.
like.
Okay, Lars,
Listen.
I want you to
So-
respond to those two
Sure,
points
sure.
he made,
So-
and then I have a
Yeah.
next
Can I
question for
respond?
you.
No,
Sure.
one second.
Yeah,
One
and
second. One second.
okay, great.
First of all, did he commit genocide on the Jewish community of Khyber? Yes, he did. And then he killed Kanana. Yes, he did. Anyway, let's go back to your other nonsense, mate. You said that Iran is technologically advanced. They cannot provide water to their own people. They cannot provide gas. They're one of the richest countries in the world. All they built is rockets and missiles because
face
that's
Israel.
To face Israel, and that's what keeps them in power.
Yeah, the
So if
hatred of Israel.
They cannot.
warming has
They don't
nothing
have
to do with it,
AI. They don't have anything. Iran was one of the most advanced countries in the world 50 years ago. Tehran was the second most visited city in the world after Paris during the Shah.
Why did they want to overthrow him then if he was so good?
It was the USA and
Yes, but there was a lot of people who were.
No, there wasn't. It was like propaganda at the time, and they done this whole propaganda about Shah. That's a different story.
He wasn't pro-Western.
Islam. No, because
the Shah wasn't pro-Western. The West didn't love him. No,
Yeah,
they just decided. You know what?
It's because he wanted to nationalise all
this is
the
really
beaches.
nationalised.
Let's just get rid of it.
But
for fun.
listen, what you just said just exposes how brainwashed you are, with all due respect. For you to think that the Islamic Republic is advanced because of Islam.
More advanced than the secular Shah, yes.
No, they're
His
not.
period,
at
yes.
That's
all.
only because of the time period.
That's
So
the time
technology
period.
is going to
At
get
some
better.
point-
I'm going to clip this and put this on social
available
media.
back
That's the
then.
biggest
He didn't make
nonsense
any.
I've
The Shah
heard
didn't
all
do
year.
You
anything
can't just
to
keep
develop
saying
the
space
technology.
Can I
ports.
respond
it's
to the
just
point at some
one
point?
example, but also
So you're pro-Islamic
the region-
Republic.
the
Can I
region-
answer
no,
this?
I'm not.
Are you sure? Are you sure? Why
I'm
not?
I'm not pro-Iran. Hell no.
You're not
I'm
pro-Iran or pro-Islamic Republic.
The global warming and the disappearance of water and the water table, the growth of population, right? This has caused water shortages. So much so that even Israel faces water shortages. You know
it doesn't.
Do you know how
I was
Israel
there 3
resolves
times.
it, right?
Desalination.
It takes water from the occupied territories in the
no,
West
there's no
Bank
occupied.
and the
There's
Jordan
no
River.
occupied territory.
Can I respond?
Okay,
So-
Can I have an
last
opportunity
point, because
to
then I have
respond?
a
and
very
also, by the
important
way,
question.
sanctions pay
No.
They
a
have got
heavy
huge
amount.
sanctions.
Before we
Iran
get
has
into
huge
geopolitics,
Huge
sanctions.
sanctions,
You're
but
not
there's a
comparing-
reason. Why is it
comparing
only Iran and
unsanctioned
North
country.
Korea that have
Comparing
sanctions? then?
unsanctioned country.
Okay,
No,
can
listen.
we
Right, okay, your last response, and then I have a very
There's a
important
reason why the Islamic Republic
question
is
I
under
have to ask
sanctions, because they're the
Abdullah.
biggest state sponsor of terrorism, and they sponsor your friends Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis. And you stand on the side of terrorists.
My friends, right? You
Yeah.
know I could do you for slander. You know that,
Okay,
right?
then let's
No, no,
stop this
fine.
because we
I
don't
could
want
do
Do
you
you
that.
for slander, please do.
Okay,
Please do.
young Bob.
Yeah, you know what? I've actually gained a bit of wisdom, which I appreciate from both of you, that you have to stay composed and let your interlocutor speak before you respond. But what I will say is, on modesty, the Bible-bashing Christians misinterpret the quote from Corinthians. When it talks about veiling, it's talking about excessive wealth. It's not talking about the physical head covering, because if you read the passage in its full exegete, it's actually talking about wealth, women showing off their beauty in wearing a lot of jewelry. On modesty as well, we only wear face coverings inside the Orthodox Church because of the Eucharist, to submit ourselves to the real body
Okay, you're
and
going
blood.
back to another point
Oh,
there.
but that's what you mentioned originally
fine,
in his
fine. You've
defense
made
of
that
modesty.
point. So
I think this
No,
is not a theological
I'm-
debate. I
yeah,
think we should
well,
stay away from that.
I think so. You've made the point about the differences between Islam and Christianity. I think it's still, on the whole, as I said,
I can make an argument for it. Like the problem is, right?
I'm sure Abdullah's views and most Muslims' views on trans and homosexuality and how we bring up our children are much more aligned with your values than, let's say, woke liberals.
No. Okay, so for example, polygamy, right? We believe there's a true virtue in one man, one woman in an eternal union, just as much as Adam
that's a big
proceeded from
difference.
Eve's
That's
rib.
a huge difference.
We
yes.
believe in the sacrament of marriage being eternal between one man and one woman. So when you're talking about social values, firstly, whenever you do something moral, it's in the act of your God that grounds the morality that you have. So if this man is saying that transgenderism is wrong because Allah has told him to do so, I already disagree with that statement because I believe his God is fictitious.
Oh, I don't.
The
come
second
on.
thing,
Okay.
the
So
second
God
thing
is-
as
This
well,
is too
I'd
much
prefer.
now.
The second thing as well, I'd prefer.
Polygamy is immoral.
But yes,
Polygamy is immoral.
It's allowed in Judaism.
So
isn't it?
the prophets of the Old Testament are immoral for practicing polygamy.
well, so the thing.
And God is immoral then for allowing them to practice polygamy then.
No,
Exactly.
because
It's the same God, right?
No,
It
because
is the God of the Old Testament
No,
and the God of
because-
the New
Yeah.
Testament. So if the God of the Old
Yes.
Testament allows polygamy, but you're saying that's immoral, then you're saying that he's immoral.
Okay, fantastic.
Because
So
the Christians then changed.
can I possibly
Well,
possibly
it was an
respond?
extension of Judaism, Christian, and then they took away circumcision, the kosher rules. They
We
took away
didn't. Okay, so the
The
kosher,
Galatians maybe not,
with the kosher
we're
laws.
going way too into
with the
theology.
kosher laws, Christ announces that all things are made clean because it's a typology of humanity being made clean through his sacrifice.
Yeah.
When you talk about the circumcision,
not all
we
meat,
continue.
meat with
Saint
blood in it
Paul-
is not
Saint
clean.
Paul did a
when
lot
we
of that.
continue on to the
Meat filled with-
circumcision, it's the circumcision of the heart, as Paul writes. When we talk about marriage as well, when we comply with God's commandments, that is the moral thing. We're not changing, we're rather
Okay, I
abrogating.
get it.
I understand this.
I've got a question. Is a form of
my-
no, wait. Is a
Yeah,
form of.
question.
Do you believe that abrogation is a change?
I believe that you don't speak for all Christians, and I believe that you
No,
don't
no, that's
speak
not
for,
answering my
you don't,
question.
No. You
Is
don't speak-
abrogation a form of
You don't
change?
speak from a
Islam
consensus
and
of Christians.
Christianity.
Yes, I
Because
was talking for the entire patristic tradition, my friend.
Seventh Day
I'm talking about the patristic tradition of the early church.
Practice Jewish laws. There are Unitarian Christians, some from free Unitarian churches as an English tradition.
They're not
here,
following the patristic
including
tradition.
Isaac Newton.
Are
who
they
was
following the patristic
the
tradition?
famous scientist,
Are they following
Isaac-
the church fathers?
Okay, I'm gonna look.
Isaac Newton was a Unitarian.
He brought
Christian,
up an 1800
all right?
heresy brought on by
Alright,
Protestant
so-
women,
Okay.
definitely
Anyway,
not following
stop.
the church
That's
tradition.
it,
This is-
okay,
this
because
is
it's
why I
about
lost-
theology and you're
yeah.
going to lose a lot of people here, okay?
Exactly.
This is
Yeah.
getting a bit speaker's corner.
Yeah.
Well, I would
This
offer.
is why I lost
would
the
offer a
interest
debate
in
with
I'm
you.
saying
religious
that-
debates.
I could
because
talk
there's-
about it, but you need about 5 hours
problem.
for this
No,
discussion.
no,
But the-
can I formally
Okay,
challenge this man?
No, I'm going to now ask,
Okay.
give my point of view.
Sure.
So my contention is far less with Islam as an ideology, actually. My problem is the political baggage that comes with Islam. That's what I don't like. So it's how Muslims are voting in this country that I have a big problem with. So for me, most Muslims, the majority, are Palestine first before anything. So they will vote for the Greens, who they don't believe with. I mean, it's run by a homosexual Jew straight away, but they will vote for him to get into power. They'll vote for all this pro-trans ideologies because the Greens are outspoken about Gaza. Even my friend, I have a Muslim friend, Wahhabi Muslim, and he loves reform. He thinks Nigel Farage is great. He's always said he's going to vote for reform. This time he voted Green. I said, why did you vote Green? He said, Palestine. They're speaking out on Palestine. So I said, well, you're going to bring in a terrible party, which will ruin this country because your loyalty is with Palestine before Britain. That's what I don't like. Now, I'm glad that Reform are pretty pro-Israel. Now, if Reform tomorrow said, we're no longer going to support Israel, would I be upset? Yes. But I would carry on voting Reform because I put Britain first. So if people, and I say this to Jews too, if they put Israel first, they can go there. Okay, if you live in this country, you put Britain first. And that is my problem, is how the Muslims are voting. They're voting in parties and people who don't care about this country, who care about Gaza more.
Okay, so the issue is not pro-Gaza or pro-Palestine. The issue is anti-genocide. Now, you might disagree, because I know the Zionists, and we can discuss that tomorrow as well, but there is strong, overwhelming evidence from genocide scholars, from the UN, from Save the Children. A whole number of people are arguing that there's a genocide going on in Palestine, and we're just anti-genocide. But
so you're going to vote in, but it's at the cost of this country, because you're voting people and parties that are going to ruin this country.
No, do you know what?
Maybe the British people don't care about what's going on in Gaza and Israel.
Wait, one second. Firstly, the leader of the Green Party, whether he's Jewish or not, doesn't matter.
Homosexual Jew. I mean, that's got to be the worst of the worst, right? According to the Quran or to the Muslims.
Unholy marriage of wokeism and Islamism.
Jew, Christian, whatever. It doesn't matter. The issue is this. Muslims in the UK will vote for any party that doesn't want to basically persecute them, right? And sometimes, unfortunately, and I've said this myself,
vote for Labour.
I've criticized it myself, right? That the only people that say we don't want to persecute you, will protect you, are the left wing. But the right wing keeps saying we need to ban mosques, shut them down, ban the burqa, all they hear from the right wing is we need to ban aspects of Islam, which theologically speaking wouldn't be so discordant with mainstream Western Christian churches.
It's called self-deportation methods,
right? And so, and they
yeah,
see,
well, I don't have a problem with that. If people don't like it, if Gaza's more important to people than this country, they need to go to Gaza.
No, but
go there.
Wait, 1 second. Do you care about the reputation of Britain? Britain's reputation?
Not particularly. No.
So Britain's reputation on the world stage.
I care about British
doesn't matter
people.
to you.
It depends what you
No,
mean.
I really don't.
Because
Depends
if they
what you mean by reputation. Some people
the
don't
thing is, if Britain,
Japan
if Britain
can have a bad
supports-
reputation to some people, and it cares about its people.
It depends on what
Okay.
you mean. So for example, reputation in terms of morality means nothing if you look at America and what they're currently
being
doing.
anti-genocide actually protects British rights. Do you know why?
There's no
Because if genocide is allowed due to racial discrimination abroad, then it can easily come back. What's good for everyone else will come back to what goes around comes around, and what's good for the goose is good for the gander.
Why should be isolationist and only lobby within our best interests?
Because if you support genocide outside, there will be someone who will be arguing using the same logic at some point in time in the future that genocide against a certain undesirable minorities or a group of people that are now undesirables should also be practiced here. Likewise, there's also a concern, for example, with the arguments that were being used against, for example, cousin marriage, which is allowed in English law, seems to be argument about, well, it could cause genetic defects. Well, should we then bring eugenics-based laws that people who have genetic testing but prior to being married or even having any kind of coupling, because if their children are going to be defective. They did 100 years ago, and of course the Nazis
Let's
also
get off from
practiced
the
that.
point of this. Do you see my
yeah.
point? Is that the Muslims in this country, the majority of them are voting in a way which does not reflect my interest and the majority of the people in this country's interest, because we're going to end up with Labour, with an unholy alliance between Labour and the Greens as a result of the fact that Muslims keep putting Gaza above all else. Again, I'm giving my own example. If Reform tomorrow said we're not going to show our support for Israel anymore, I would still vote for Reform because I believe that they are best for this country. And if I don't like it, then I can bugger off to Israel.
Well,
Can I ask a
I find
question?
there's some hypocrisy in this because, for example, Tommy Robinson, which I think both of you look up to. I mean, he went to
No,
Israel.
definitely
Or
not.
otherwise, he went to Israel, spoke to
I did also 3 times.
I have no doubt about that.
Yes. You shouldn't.
Clearly,
There's no genocide. Go and check it out for
Tommy
yourself.
Robinson, he spoke to the guy called Yisrael Fleischer, I think the name, in Hebron, who said that Britain has a special place in hell, because it didn't give the Zionists everything it wanted in Palestine during the Mandate period. And he was like,
not a Zionist,
and he
by the
didn't,
way.
he didn't. I know.
I'm not
But
Israeli,
you
but
have
I'm not
You
Israeli.
have praised Tommy
No, but
Robinson.
I don't.
or-
By the
okay.
way,
call him Tel Aviv
excuse
Tommy
me,
Robinson.
But I've said very publicly I
let me
disagree
finish
with
my
him on
point,
his
finish my
I
point.
don't
Finish
agree
my
with this
point.
person
The
you're talking
problem
about.
is-
I'm not
the
an
problem is
Israeli. I'm British.
that the problem is that Israel has funded many and many people in their pocket, not looking at you particularly, but has many people in their pocket who are Israel first. They'll say we must ban certain things, ban the criticism of Israel, ban the
Then they should
British,
get out.
a British
They should go
person's
to
right
Israel.
to criticize Israel and Zionism because they say this should be banned under hate speech laws.
People
That
are criticising Israel all the time. Look at the
restricts
BBC.
the
Look at the
restricts the rights.
BBC, the
But
British
many in the right wing
Broadcasting
want to argue
Service.
to constrict the rights of the British person for the sake of a foreign country. Whereas those who are arguing against the genocide in Gaza are not arguing to ban anyone's rights in England or to restrict or curtail anyone's freedoms in England. They merely want England to stop giving money and America to stop
barely
giving
any
money to Israel.
They give barely any money
Can I
to.
respond?
It has to actually. We have to wrap up. So
One
please
last thing, because
respond.
I didn't get into
But
this
okay,
conversation.
very quick points.
Yeah, so
Okay, so do you want to go
Please,
first?
not
and I'll
about
say the
about
rest?
religion right
yeah,
now.
I'm not
It's-
going to. Yeah, so the firstly, I think it's dishonest that there's a Muslim coalition of progressive lefties when fundamentally Marxist understanding of history is not compatible with any orthodox religion. I think it's out of a desperation, and I think the Muslim vote is largely undefined. Firstly, you had the issue of, well, is it halal to technically vote here in the UK? Then you had an issue of supporting independent candidates, and then they got in a coalition with your party. Then one of the Muslim independent MPs were asked about transgenderism, and they said, well, I don't believe in that there's more than 2 genders. And then, of course, they threw a hissy fit there. So, in fact, the people that are going to be persecuting the Muslims more is the progressive left. So, it might be an issue, not just because the right might have some self-deportation methods in terms of, banning halal meat, banning the hijab, so on and so forth. But when it comes to the left, they'll ban positions which go contrary to transgenderism, for example, which will directly impact Islam.
So I agree. I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
No, I actually agree. But see, Muslims are stuck between the devil and the deep blue sea. And I'm saying that if the right just simply stopped arguing that let's ban the burqa and shut down mosques and restrict the rights of people to practice their religion peacefully, if they went back from that, then there'd be no problem.
Wait, so surely you then concede then that the political spectrum currently, the representation of the British people is not in line with the Muslim community? Because on both the left and the right, it does not support the Islamic belief system?
No, I'm saying.
Can you give me one political
No.
Can you give me one political
not
party?
aligned with Muslim. I'm saying that from the right wing, there is arguments to restrict and curtail people's right to practice their religion, not Islam in particular. And there on the left wing, there are certain demands to practice
Is there
to
any
have certain
political
ideas which are contradictory to both Christianity, Islam, and Judaism.
So is there any political
So
party?
hence, it is a.
Is there any
between the devil
political?
and
Is there any political?
No, there is
party-
not. I don't think.
Is
I
there
think
any
that's the
political
answer.
party that represents the Muslim people and their theological beliefs that support it?
No, it's not about representing.
There's
I'm saying
not
that,
one. There's not one.
I'm saying-
and I'm going to
I'm-
leave Younes.
I'm saying
last
that-
point.
So, look,
I don't disagree with you on that.
Okay.
So there's no
fundamentally,
issue.
Islam is not compatible with the West. Islam is not here to take part, it's here to take over, and it has done throughout the history. So we should be very careful of it. I don't have anything against Muslims. There's a difference between being Islamophobic and Muslimophobic. There's no phobia of Islam, because Islam is actually a barbaric religion and it has done a lot of wrongs in history. The difference with Christianity and Judaism, Christianity has gone through its own age of Renaissance and own age of enlightenment. Islam hasn't. Islam is going through it now, to the point that Mohammed bin Salman from Saudi has basically said all hadiths are void. Don't even teach the Quran in our schools anymore. And UAE is not sending students anymore to the UK because they feel like they're being indoctrinated here. And so they and they've also banned the Muslim Brotherhood in those countries.
So you both think that Islam is not compatible with the West?
He'd literally
It's
just
not
admitted there's no
compatible
way.
if you want
And
to
last-
go ahead
Okay.
with the civil
We really-
society.
we really do
even
have to
the
finish
Saudi,
now.
Yeah,
even
I'll wrap it up
Saudis,
then.
excuse
Yeah.
me, even Saudis have realized this. UAE have realized this, and hopefully, when Iran is freed, we get rid of the Islamic Republic. Iran will be a thriving society.
Okay.
And just to say, your claim that Iran is an advanced country because they have a bunch of rockets and missiles when people are starving is the most ridiculous thing I have heard this year.
Under sanctions. Anyway, and
Okay, last point.
yeah.
Really,
Okay.
last point now. Do you think Islam is compatible with the West?
So, by the way, I don't think people are starving, but there's a water deficit due to overpopulation, global warming.
Excuse me,
No,
and
there's
can we
no,
stick
it's
to
not
this?
true.
But
It's
my
not
point-
true. Why is
my-
No,
that
no,
my-
not
please,
point
please.
is-
Okay,
my
so
point is, I
Islam,
wanna
is
maybe
it
ask-
compatible with the West? Yes or no?
Islam is compatible anywhere. The issue is whether the West can be willing to tolerate Muslims. 100 years ago, the main question was, can the West tolerate Jews? Is Judaism compatible with Western civilization? And we're seeing the same repetition of this. But I would finish with this point, which is Christianity, should Christianity be tolerated anywhere else outside the West? Because Christianity is a proselytizing religion. It wants to spread. It wants the whole world to adopt its message by its own admission.
Yeah, of course.
So Islam also is a proselytizing religion. So if Islam wants to is deemed to be, it wants to take over because it wants to proselytize, then by the same logic, China should ban Christianity in China because
They have already.
Because
they call it a mental illness.
No, they haven't. Because
call it a mental illness.
it wants to take over.
Can I challenge you on a mubahala?
No,
and in
unfortunately, we've run out of
and
time.
Muslims
Muslims
in the Middle
immigrate
East-
to Christian countries, but
I
Christians don't
think I'd
immigrate
rile
to
them up
Muslim
with some logic they can't argue against. And if should Christianity be banned in the Middle East because it's a proselytizing religion, so therefore it wants to take over, quote unquote. As
Because
long
it's not a
as
militant
a
religion.
religion doesn't want to force people to convert,
It does.
to its.
It does.
which-
Islam definitely does.
I've quoted you verses from the Quran. You've quoted
does.
me.
It sounds
does.
like to
Zero.
me,
It does.
on that
Right.
point,
Zero.
it sounds like to me,
Don't
Judaism,
tell me my religion.
Judaism,
I know it.
excuse me,
Judaism is against
dishonest.
conversion.
Judaism's the only
I
one that
think,
doesn't do this.
I
By the way,
think,
that verse
I
you
think
said about the
arguments,
compulsion of religion, that is something that
Okay.
exclusively
It's,
applies
Thank
to
you,
there's
Islam.
thank
actually
you.
two verses I
History
quoted that
Thank
have
you,
the same thing.
gentlemen.
Has
Thank you very
beheaded
much.
people, has
And
charged people
we'll
with
see you on the
jizya.
next episode. Thank you.